Hey there, everybody. It's meteorologist JB Singleton from the home office. Tonight, I'm going to try this out anyway. We're looking at a very active weather pattern coming up over the next 24 to 36 hours. By this time tomorrow night, it's going to be pouring down rain in a lot of areas. And so we're going to be I'm looking at a lot of heavy rain setting up for the area. A lot of it may depend on the details, though. The models have gone back and forth on what they want to do with this upper level system coming through. It's going to come through strong. The question I have is just how strong, because if it comes through strong enough, we could definitely be looking at some flooding across the area. If it comes through a little weaker, like some of the models are saying so far this afternoon, we could be looking at just maybe an inch or so of rain, maybe up to 2 inches. But some of the higher in the mounts here on the worst case scenario could get over 3 inches in some spots. I want to show you one of those in just a second. This is the upper level map, and we've had a few clouds in the picture today. And you may have noticed it was raining early this morning if you were up that early like I was. We had some showers scoot through. This is ahead of the big system. You can see what the jet stream's doing off to the west. We've got a kind of a curly Q here moving out of Minneapolis into eastern Iowa here. The overall flow is one of a dip. You can see that dip arcing down in the jet stream across the plain states, and this is picking up a lot of moisture out ahead of it. So that alone is going to pivot some moisture in our direction for tomorrow in the form of some rain showers from time to time. But we've also got a lot of warm air out ahead of it. We've got colder air that's digging on the backside of this, and so what happens aloft is the system wants to amplify even more. And you can see that if you look a little closer, you can see a kink in the line here across the Dallas, Texas area. There's another kink around that curly Q there. Those were initially looking at maybe a closed upper level low, which is one of the stronger scenarios I was telling you about, swinging down like this and then coming up from the south across the mountains. If that were to happen, that would be a classic flooding situation for the area. Maybe not one of our worst floods for sure, but certainly, it would cause some flooding problems. The models have been backing off on the closed part of that system, but they're keeping it as an open wave. That takes it through here a little bit weaker and a little faster, which cuts down, obviously, on some of the rainfall totals. This is the rapid update cycle. And most of this activity, whether it comes through weak or strong, is still going to be happening later in our forecast, I think, as we go into the afternoon for Tuesday. Although some of the weakest solutions, the weakest is the fastest, would put it into tomorrow morning, late in the morning, and through the afternoon. But I think around lunchtime is a pretty good area to watch out for, and then for those showers and maybe even some stronger storms. And then as we go through the evening hours, this is the upper level spin. Notice how it comes through, and these dark lines here never close off. That's what we call an open wave, and that's going to just pivot through the area. It was going to come through, it looked like kind of a negative tilt where it was more like this instead of like this. It's coming through a little bit farther to the north now, and that is taking down some of the precip totals on this model and on a few of the other models, including the NAM. However, I've been looking at some of the other models that I kind of in more line with, and we'll see what happens within the next hour. I'm going to put an update out on Patreon, let you know what the 0Z models say, because they're going to be coming out here within the hour off the NAM and the high-res NAM. But this is the UK Met, which, by the way, is the second most accurate model behind the Euro. It doesn't get the attention it sometimes deserves, but it's a pretty good model. So as we go through tonight, all the rain here is off to the west with our big cold front out here, and that's going to be moving to the east. That in and of itself is not a big deal, but notice this low around Asheville, North Carolina, moving west of Charlotte. Starts to move north during the day. That's the initial low. There could be a second low that's kind of showing up in the modeling. You see that area of heavier precip behind the low. There could be a second wave back here, because remember, our upper level energy is going to be digging down here, and depending on the model of choice, it's either going to lift at that point off to the north and weaken, or stay pretty strong as it moves through. I'm leaning toward a stronger solution just because the pattern favors it, but it could do either one of those scenarios. But needless to say, as we go into the early afternoon hours of Tuesday, by that time we should have some heavy rain starting to advance into the area. And again, depending on exactly where that sets up, it should be along and just north of the surface low. We'll see some heavier rainfall amounts there, and you can see how it just blossoms into a lot of heavy rain throughout the afternoon and evening hours of your Tuesday. So the models have trended regardless of strength, they have trended a bit faster. I was looking at a Tuesday night, early Wednesday event. Now it looks like a Tuesday into Tuesday night event. But I do think that we are going to see a fair amount of rain falling in a short amount of time. This is the total rainfall off the UK Met model. And so if you add up all those amounts here, it's a little hard to see. I'm going to pop this up temporarily so you can see the scale here on the right above my head here. But once you get into the purple, which by the way, okay, so you've got Patrick County, Henry County here into Stokes County and Wilkes County in North Carolina. You've got some 3 or 4 inch amounts showing up here, and you've got most of the area in the red, which is about 1 inch to 2 inches of rain. That appears to be 1 to 2 inches, I think, what most people will see. But what I'm worried about for tomorrow and tomorrow night, where do we see these? Do we see these 3 or 4 inch amounts? If we do see them, it would be where the counterclockwise rotation from this low starts to run up against the Blue Ridge Parkway and wrings out what we call that upslope moisture. It enhances the rain that's already falling out there. And that's what the model's picking up on here. So this model to me makes a lot of sense. Looking at the Euro, not too impressive. This is I believe this is the 12Z run off of Pivotal Weather. And let me get rid of this orientation, pop it up a little bigger for you. You can see that also has this mainly as just an upper wave moving through. There's no closed low with this either, although a lot of the energy there in the blue is still off to the south. It kind of goes negative tilt, but it waits until it gets to West Virginia to take that tilt, and that will send a lot of the heavier rain and energy out before it can really get going if that model does verify. This is a different model. This is the one we just saw with the higher end amounts. This is looking at the relative humidity at about 700 millibars, which is critical for heavier rainfall. This is tomorrow morning. The main thin ribbon of moisture is off to our west. But the idea is, though, if you get one of these stronger solutions and you do get somewhat of an upper low forming and a kink in this front, you're going to expand that area of moisture out as it moves east. And the model does hint on that. You can see how it's thin there, and then it kind of gets bigger as it goes into eastern Virginia. But even this model is sliding it off to the northeast pretty fast, so it doesn't have time to really get going the way it looked just about 24 hours ago even. It's changed a little bit. The GFS, for those of you that are interested, looks like this, and this is kind of a weird map that I'm showing you, but I'd like to get a little technical here. The oranges, that's where your surface cyclonic spin is, so that pretty much shows you areas of low pressure and where the surface front is. Your upper level winds here in the violets and the blues, and then you look at the green areas as opposed to, let's say, the purple areas, the pink areas. The green areas is where we see an overall lift going on, and Q-vector convergence, and divergence would be where we have sinking air and calm weather trying to move in. So this is tomorrow morning. You can see the trough is off to the west of the area. We've got some lift out here in the green. You've got the cyclonic spin starting to ramp up a bit across the south, and so that's a low coming in from the south. And this looks good to me for heavier rainfall. This is at 2 p.m. tomorrow. You see that low pressure at the surface there showing up in the orange. So the center of that's near Charlotte, North Carolina. And if you follow the bluer and purple lines here, that's pretty much the upper level flow. That's going to take it across, if it continues moving that way, in my opinion, it takes it close to Martinsville and Franklin County and out toward the Lynchburg area. Now it's going to be moving east with time, so you can see as it goes north, it's going to go more toward Richmond according to this model, but not if it starts to dig a little bit more. If it gets a little bit stronger, it would hold closer to the mountains. So if this low decides to go just maybe 10 or 20 degrees farther to the west, still going to move northeast, but if it veers a little bit back into the mountains, that would give us some heavier rainfall for sure, especially across the foothills. And you can see how we stay in this area of lift going into Tuesday night. This is early Wednesday morning at 2 a.m. A lot of lift across the area, but we're on the backside of the system by that point. So we'll have a sharp clearing line coming in for Wednesday morning. This is the 18Z Euro model. You can get this off of Weather Bell. So the Euro actually has these in-between runs it does in addition to the GFS model, which does that, and the NAM model, but you can't find this data anywhere. But I'd like to show you this. This is off the Euro, so I've zoomed you in big time here in the Roanoke County, Franklin County, and Patrick County. And this is typically an area that sees the most rainfall. This lines up, by the way, with this map. This is the UK Met This is the Euro. The two of these look very similar, so I think they might be onto something. Climatologically, I would say, yeah. So this is kind of where I'm leaning. But you can see some areas here have about an inch to a half an inch of rain, and that may be the case for a few folks. But near the Parkway, Roanoke Valley into Franklin County, going down through Patrick County and Floyd County, that's the crest of the Blue Ridge right there. As you go into Stokes County and again Wilkes County and Surrey County, you get these 1 inch plus amounts, and you're even looking at about close to 2 inches here in western Franklin County. And that's off the Euro model, and it's not going to include a lot of those details. So there could be some 2 inch plus amounts right along the Parkway, depending on exactly what happens aloft. The other big story is going to be the temperature. It's going to be falling because we've got a surface front moving in. In addition to the moisture will ride along the boundary of the front. So where is the front? It's going to be across the mountains by early tomorrow morning. So we'll be in the 50s all day probably in the Allegheny Highlands in the NRV, whereas Danville and Lynchburg will be in the upper 60s at times. So this is going to be a battle of air masses coming in, and usually when you see that, you've got some weather going on anyway by the laws of physics. And so that'll be happening here tomorrow by the morning, 70 almost in Danville, and about 15 to 20 degrees cooler across Tazewell and Bland County. One of the joys of forecasting here, even some 40s showing up on the model here across the higher elevations of Greenbrier County. And that cooler air will move in with the rain, and it'll continue to scour out, and this is where we may have some storminess to worry about tomorrow, some severe weather. Watching that from Charlottesville east of, say, Danville and the South Boston and Charlotte Courthouse. And you can see how the temperatures fall back off into the 50s, even getting into the south side area, at least in Martinsville, by the end of the day on Tuesday. So it'll be breezy at times. It'll be perhaps stormy at times, especially for south side. And we're going to have that heavier rainfall moving in as we go into your Tuesday afternoon, especially Tuesday evening and into part of the overnight on Tuesday. Stay weather aware, and remember, if there is any flooding, I'll let you know about that, and I'll encourage you never to drive across flooded roadways if that is the case.